Hey guys, welcome to today's video. Today we're talking about Wake Forest. Last year was a difficult year for the Demon Deacons as they went 4-8, which was actually my prediction for them last year. They had some key departures in the offseason with Mitch Griffiths, the starting quarterback, wide receiver Wesley Grimes, and cornerback Deshaun Jones, and Brendan Harris are all gone. But a key arrival for you is quarterback Hank Bachmeier from Louisiana Tech, cornerback Capone Blue, defensive end Camden Hardy, and wide receiver Ben Grice. Wake's front seven looks like they're going to be very good. A lot of returning production, and I think they will be one of the best defensive lines in the conference this year. Obviously, better QB play is needed for the Deacs to have a chance at making a bowl game this year. This was one of the first years since Dave Clawson has taken over the program that they did not make a bowl game. It was the first year since 2015. Wide receiver Donovan Green, who was a productive wide receiver in his playing time at Wake Forest, is back from injury. He missed a lot of last year because of that. And getting into the strengths and weaknesses, obviously the front seven is a big strength for Wake Forest this year. Running back Damon Claiborne and wide receiver Donovan Green and Taylor Morin will look to be offensive weapons for Hank Bachmeier. I think that is a weakness, though, with Hank Bachmeier's not necessarily stellar year last year. He only threw 10 touchdowns, and I believe he had 7 interceptions. And obviously the secondary is a big concern for Wake Forest. But let's get into the schedule. You start off with North Carolina A&T, the Aggies, a historically black college. I think you get the win simply because it's a there's a big talent gap between A&T and Wake Forest, with Wake Forest being a Power 4 opponent. So I don't think you'll have any problem there. Then you play UVA. UVA and Wake are very similar teams with what they're coming off of from last year. I would say UVA had a lot closer games that they could have won. But obviously you're at home, so it's a big advantage. And because of that, I'll give you the win against the Cavaliers. Then you play number 6 Ole Miss at home. Obviously a big SEC talent and a very prolific offense with Lane Kiffin running the show there. I have to have you down for a loss. Ole Miss is very far ahead as a program in comparison to Wake Forest. I don't think any Wake Forest fan will argue with me about this loss against Wake Forest. Then you have your bye week, and then you play Louisiana. Louisiana had some pretty good years under Billy Napier where they were ranked a couple times at the end of the year. But since then, they haven't made a big splash. I will give you the win against the Group of 5 opponent. Then you go at NC State. NC State is one of the dark horses to win the conference. They have a lot of good transfers that came in. Obviously, one of them being Wesley Grimes that I mentioned earlier, Jordan Waters, Grayson McCall, and they still have Kevin Concepcion. The defense, obviously a bit of concern for NC State with losing Peyton Wilson and the tackling issues that they had during the bowl game against Kansas State. But with that being said, they finally got a win after, I believe, 8 years of struggle in Winston-Salem, and they're at home this year. They typically do very well against Wake Forest when they're at home. A few exceptions, obviously, when Jamie Newman upset them when they were ranked. But I don't think that'll be the case. I think you take the loss to NC State. Then you play Clemson afterwards, which is a brutal back-to-back game scheduling. But Clemson has been the standard that most of the ACC, apart from last year with Florida State winning, has compared themselves to. And Clemson has been a very tough opponent for Wake Forest to beat. And I don't think this is a year that you beat them. I think you lose to the Tigers as well. Then you go on the road at UConn. UConn has been scheduling a lot of ACC opponents, and with this matchup, UConn has been struggling since they became an independent after leaving the American. And because of that, and the talent level that you have, especially with your front seven, and the steps that you will be taking with the offense, the mesh offense, and Hank Buckmeyer, I think you will get the win. Then you go on the road to Stanford. Stanford's first season in the conference. They aren't expected to do very well. The preseason poll has them finishing last in the standings. But I think this is a game where you get upset. I think this will be one of Stanford's few conference wins this year, possibly their only conference win. It's part of the brutal October that Wake Forest has with NC State, Clemson, UConn, and Stanford, with 3 of those being road games. I could possibly see you going 2-2, winning the UConn and the Stanford game, but having that stretch of games, it's going to be a very rough October for Wake Forest fans. Then you have your bye week, and then you play Cal at home. I think that'll be a win. I don't think Cal's going to be very good. I think people are actually overestimating how Cal is going to do this year. The preseason poll has them pretty high. I think they're going to be near the bottom, near the 17, 16, 15 spot, along with Stanford. The Stanford-Cal game might actually end up being the battle for who finishes last. And then you go at UNC. UNC has lost a lot of talent from last year, particularly with Drake May. But they still have some weapons. Obviously, Nesbitt, the tight end there, will be a weapon for Max Johnson. If he does end up being the starter, whoever the starter ends up being, I do expect it to be Max Johnson. The defense, obviously, will still have some problems, as it has under Mac Brown. But they are at home. You do have to go on the road. It is a rivalry game. And UNC has done fairly well in the recent years in this game against Wake Forest. And I think he will take the loss. Then you go at Miami. Cam Ward, the preseason ACC Player of the Year. A lot of hype surrounding the Hurricanes this year. Very good recruiting class coming in with Mario Cristobal. I think you take the loss. And then you finish off the year with Duke, another rivalry game. I've gone back and forth about this game because Duke has lost a lot of linemen, and you are returning a productive front seven. And your offensive line is expected to be pretty good, as it usually is under Dave Clawson. I think at this point, though, both lines of scrimmage will be battle-tested throughout the year. There won't be any jitters. Duke, I believe, will have it figured out at this point of offensive line and defensive line play. Manny Diaz is a defensive-oriented guy. He was the defensive coordinator at both Miami and Penn State. He was the head coach at Miami afterwards, and that did not go well. But I think there's still quite a lot of talent from Elko's time at Duke. I definitely see a reality where you win this game, especially with your front seven dominating the Duke offensive line and causing problems for Malik Murphy and just totally stunting their offense the entire game. And that would get you to 6-6 in a bowl game, and I think a lot of Wake Forest fans would be happy with that, especially with how last year went. But for now, I will have you down for a loss, but just barely. Like, this could be a 1, 2, or 3 point game. I think it's that close. But I have you going 5-7 with a 2-6 conference record, and that'll end today's video. Thank you for watching.